Okay. Hello, everybody, and you're very welcome to Irish Wheelchair Association's discussion with our ambassadors celebrating the International Day of Persons with a Disability. I'd like to welcome all our guests today, and I'll introduce you. We have on the line with us today, we have Conor McCauley. And Conor is from Drogheda. We have Mark Barry. Mark is based in South County Dublin. We have Shannon O'Farrell Malloy. Shannon is based down in Wexford. We have Ikura Nassim, who is based in South County Dublin as well. Graham Merrigan, also in South County Dublin. Geraldine Lavelle, and who is based up in Sligo. And of course, myself, John Fulham, who is Irish Wheelchair Association's Public Engagements Manager. So you're very welcome to our discussion today. We're hoping to shoot the breeze and get various opinions from our ambassadors, all about what this day means to people with disabilities. And all of us are disabled people who have lived experience with disability. So it'll be very interesting from my perspective and hopefully yours to get a variety of views and perspectives. So, folks, you're very welcome, and thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
So, look,
Thanks, John.
I'm gonna start the conversation and throw it out to you that in the video post that you'll have seen going up on Irish Wheelchair Association's social media today, you'll have articulated quite clearly what International Day of People with Disabilities is means to you. Can I throw it out here in the context of what you believe it does? Do you believe it has the impact that probably the day has aimed to achieve? And I'll start that one, Graham. I'll throw that to you to start, and we'll take it from there. First man up.
Of course, you're starting with me.
Of course, yeah.
I think it does what it's supposed to do on the day, and I just think that whether it be ourselves or the public, I think we probably just need to do more, in terms of the 12-month gap between today and next year. It's great celebrating it on the day, and it does do what it says on the tin. It does get focus. It does get awareness. It does celebrate. But perhaps maybe we all probably need to do more in the months before and after the day itself.
Okay, and Graham, from your perspective, like you were very clear, it's about celebrating and recognizing people with disabilities. I suppose, do you think that in terms of disabled people, that we are getting that recognition all year round, or that it is helping us achieve tackle the issues that disabled people are facing every day?
Yeah, well, I think it's getting better. I think the media are getting better. Perhaps that's because it was a Paralympics year. But we need to keep on top of the media just to not give people with disabilities airtime in a Paralympic year. We need to make sure it's there in the years between Paralympic years as well. I mean,
Mm.
I thought the focus on the coverage of Paralympics Ireland on RTE was good, but I thought it could have been better.
Okay, fair enough. Igora, thanks, Graham. I'll throw it out to you in the context of what you believe the day means to you. Would you have
Well,
an opinion on it?
to be honest, I think this day should be really used for awareness. It definitely is, but like Graham said, like I feel it's like there's only a few days where there is like such awareness, and I just think it should be expanded. Like it should be celebrated all year round, except for just one day.
Okay, okay. And
Yeah.
do any of the other, like Geraldine, how would you feel about things? Because I know you're quite a busy activist in terms of raising profile and writing and blogging, etc.
Yeah, I do feel as well that International Day of Persons with the Disability, it's important for a number of reasons. I think this day is a stepping stone to reducing some of the possible existing stereotypes and maybe harmful practices, surrounding people with disabilities, and kind of raising more awareness around their capabilities and the contributions that they make to society. because I think sometimes this might go unrecognised, um, simply because of the fact that people with mobility and sensory issues can, can often be isolated from the community and their environment, and as a result, they may be unappreciated or under appreciated for their contributions. Um, I think this day is essential. International Day of Persons with a Disability. I think it's essential because it empowers people by giving them a voice and a representation, and that's essential, and that's what it's about, really. What else do I have to say? I suppose on the issue, yeah, I do write a considerable amount, and I blog and write for papers, just around giving the voice or a voice to certain issues or aspects of living with a disability. So I incurred my disability back in 2013. So I haven't always lived with the disability, but I suppose I've been honoured with the ability to discuss challenges that I faced, because I do get good feedback and people do respond well to my posts. I think.
Okay,
Um,
thanks, Geraldine. And just on that
I,
point, do you think by just having one day that we run into the risk of it being tokenistic if we don't maintain the I suppose the profile and the work throughout the rest of the year?
yeah, definitely. That's a good term for it. Yeah, because I suppose people, there should be long term education, because I suppose there's power in knowledge, and from a young age, it's about raising awareness and encouraging conversations. It should just be one day of the year where people are allowed hear about um, certain aspects of our lives, or not even aspects. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Um, Achievements. And
Yeah.
we all achieve quite a lot every day, and I think that's, as I said, unrecognized some of the times, or it might even be engulfed with ignorant stereotypes.
Mm.
But it's around raising awareness and empowering people. So maybe, yeah, we need to do more. As Graham said, maybe we shouldn't just be focusing on it this year because it's a Paralympic year. It should be, what about the years in between? Yeah, we need to somehow open the platform to other days, and more, more, whether it be community involvement, or I don't know what we could organise.
Okay.
I suppose, yeah,
But definitely something more, but then
more,
letting it away with being a tokenistic event if it's just celebrated or acknowledged once a year.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. And Connor, from your perspective, you were very clear that it was about raising awareness for people to understand the true experience of disabled people. Would you like to elaborate on that for us a little bit?
Yeah, I do think so. I really do think so. It's really important for people to see the struggles that all of us would go through. And I think it's really good for raising awareness, especially, Um, that's what I really wanted to be, focus on
Mm.
raising awareness for people with disabilities of all types, and it's so important because I don't think we're seen that much in society, and we're always sort of pushed back in society, and I feel we need to be more pushed out there and be more seen as the norm. I think that's what this day should hopefully be the aim of, and hopefully show people we're just like anybody else.
Yeah, which we are. And I suppose Shannon, from your perspective, certainly you were enthusiastic to celebrate and to acknowledge that we, with the support of everybody, it's not just people with disabilities, disabled people, whatever your preference in terminology is, to have to do this on their own path. That it's about together we achieve more. Do you want to talk a bit more about your views on that? I don't know. I think Shannon might be
Yeah,
having
so
connections. Okay, she's here. Go on. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so I just think first of all it's about it, to me it's about celebrating your disability and celebrating who you really are. And to me, with family and friends around you, and with the right support, to me you can achieve anything you put your mind to. Really, I always call it the dream team. So between me, my family, and my friends, we can achieve anything. And I think we should always think like that. And again, celebrate disability and turn it to a positive thing rather than a negative thing. If you get what I'm saying.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I get that absolutely. Um, and thank you, Shannon. And Mark, I know I'm going to throw it at you as well. Do you have a view on the day itself and what it can achieve?
Yeah, I was just listening to everybody there, and everybody's kind of hitting the notes that I would talk about anyway. Certainly, in terms of, I think it's really important in terms of visibility. I think it's really important in terms of recognition, but also in relation to who it impacts. So for me, who it impacts is it impacts people like ourselves who have limited mobility and physical disabilities, but also our friends, our partners, our families, our mothers, our fathers, our husbands, wives, partners, all that sort of stuff. So it's huge. International Day of Persons with Disabilities has huge connotations to it for me and who it impacts. I'm 47 now. When I was younger, I didn't know anything about International Day of Persons with Disabilities. I don't know if there was one when I was younger. So it's great to see that. But I also hear from everybody today talking about keeping that impact alive, and I think that's really really important. If you look at like marriage equality, when that came about, that was hugely impactful, and it had the support of like everybody from around society. And I think that's what we need as people with disabilities. We need people to embrace the day in and of itself, and then how that will translate in the months to follow and the years to follow. So that, as everybody's saying here, that's not just this once-off day that we celebrate only if you have a disability. So I think it's very important that it impacts not just ourselves, but the people that we love around us, our good friends and our family.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And one of the things that, like, as I say, we're all of us here are chair users, are have a disability of some form. One of the things and one of the mantras that I know Irish Wheelchair Association will be pushing forward on is that it's very important to see our disability, but to see our ability at the same time. And I suppose that, do you think that the day and the activity and the awareness that is raised around that helps achieve that goal rather than just some people would, but give you some context. Some people, quite well intentioned, would say to me, "Oh, sure, I don't see your disability." But I suppose for me, that I'm very aware that my disability is fundamentally part of who I am. It doesn't define me. It doesn't rule my life, but it does influence, and it's not something that needs to be ignored or needs to be even considered as a negative. I see it as a positive, but it does come with certain circumstances that need to be recognized and challenges that need to be recognized as well. I'll throw it out to you all there. What are your opinions on that? Do you think the day is achieving, I suppose, a change in the conversation or a change in mindset around that?
How do you measure that though, John? How do you measure if it's a good reaction from the public, or
Yeah, well, do
because
you know it? Mm.
ultimately we want the public to be educated and to be informed, and but so how do we measure the success of the day?
Yeah, and it's a good question, Graham, and I don't know the answer to that, but I'm really interested in, I suppose, the only way we can measure it for this conversation is around your perceptions of the engagement that you receive. So for the people that you meet every day, the people around you, the people you talk to, the people you work with, do you believe it's having an impact in that way for them? Don't all jump into the conversation at one time, guys.
Well, I mean, it's exactly what you were saying there. You know that we all have friends that say, "Oh, I don't see the disability," but there is a disability there,
Mm,
and you know, society isn't made for people with wheelchairs, so
mm,
they only see that when they're with you in their experience with you, and that's not only for that's not only for today. That's like that could be the weekend. That could be going to the supermarket, going into the city and trying to find a disability parking spot, for example. You know, it could be going to for a meal and there's no toilet. It could be going for a meal in a restaurant and there's steps. And it's those living experiences where your friends, your family, work colleagues, whoever, that's when their
mm.
awareness is raised, and that's when they say, God, I didn't know it was like this. You know, so we all have our support network, we all have our bubble, we all have our circle. They know what it's like, but I just don't know if they know about this day and about how it should be celebrated and how, you know, how more awareness should be publicized and whatnot.
Okay, and would any of you have had that same experience that I articulated there, just around people's perceptions of you and people's, I suppose, the way they would look at it? Geraldine, I'll throw it to you. In your work and your activism, have you come across that?
Yes, I would have, I suppose. For me, my physical disability, as you said, is part of who I am as well. So, as I said, I incurred a disability. I haven't always lived with one. So, for a long time after I became disabled, um, I probably only could see my disability. And
Mm,
especially when I went out in society and, you know, you felt kind of singled out. But then after a while, and with the help of family and friends, they kind of reassured me and reminded me, I suppose, that I was more than just not just a disability. I had talents, I had skills. You know, I'm a sister. I lecture at IT Sligo around health promotion. I have a partner, friends. You know, I'm still the same person. It doesn't, as you said, John, define who you are. It is definitely a large, not a large, I suppose it is a large, it has a large role to play when it comes to your day to day living circumstances.
mm,
But with regards your skills, your mindset, you know, they're like anybody else's. And I suppose there is a lack of visibility and affirmation of disabled individuals in the media. And this can create unnecessary misery for people with disabilities because you aren't recognised for being a contributing member of society.
mm.
So I think, as we said, this day is important for those reasons. Um, and I suppose I've gone off track now.
Yeah. No,
I'm
no, you're
thinking about
fine. You're
all these.
fine. Look, look, it triggers so many thoughts and so many conversations. And look, Ikura, you've been sitting there just listening to us. And like from your perspective, do you then think people tend to define disabled people by their disability and judge them and their expectations of us in that manner?
To be honest, yes, because whenever, like, for example, when I tell people I've done my master's, when I tell people I've gotten a bachelor's degree, they're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." And then I'm kind of like, yeah, it is amazing, but it shouldn't be more amazing than the person down the road getting the same kind of qualification
Yes.
I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, that
definitely.
and good on you for all those achievements. I haven't done that, and I do think it's amazing, but for the right reasons, because I do admire anybody who does achieve and go to college. And Connor, I see you nodding your head there. From your perspective, I take it you've got some experience in this way.
Yeah, as yourself and all the rest were saying, it is that type of thing of, you know, you go and study or you go and get a job and people are like, oh, fair play and well done, you're amazing, you got a job, you studied. But I think people don't realize that a lot of people with disabilities are able to get out and achieve things. I think it's just what's holding us back is the society and the way things are in the world, such as going out and, as Graham was saying himself, like restaurants not being accessible, like not having an accessible toilet or having steps. I think it's that holds us back. It's not actually our
Yes.
circumstances.
Yeah, fair enough. And Shannon, thanks, Connor. And can I throw it over to you? If you're able to hear us? I know Shannon has some connection issues with the bad weather down in Wexford. But from your perspective, Shannon, what would you feel on this topic altogether? Have you come across this?
Yeah, I kinda with Connor. I think we should be letting people know we can live a life like everyone else. We can travel, we can walk, and so can everyone else. So no difference in my opinion.
Okay, and I suppose from that point of view, I'm gonna kind of change the tack on it. I'll stick with you, Shannon. So, what in terms of the reality? So we say, it is society that places an awful lot of restrictions on people. So let's talk about what does your disability mean to you, and maybe you can take the question in any way you want to and answer it in that way. But look, the examples could be: does it mean to you that it opens doors, or does it mean to you that you're faced with challenges versus maybe about transport, or is it maybe the cost of living with the disability? Does that raise its ugly head with some of you? I'd be interested in see what a disability means to you in a positive and negative way in your life.
To me, what I do is opens doors. I love my life with a disability. I think it's a story I can share and that I'm proud to be able to share with people, and people can learn from me and I can learn from them. So I enjoy doing going out with friends, going off on holidays. The negative effects of kind of having a disability, I suppose, is people, some people might think your time is not as valuable as other people's, and that kind of really bothers me. And it's sometimes people will disrespect you and think it's okay to do that, and it's not okay to do it because you won't do it to my friend. So why are you doing it to me? So they are kind of the negatives, but I
Okay.
try stick to looking at the positives.
Okay, thanks a million, Shannon. And Connor, I'll throw that question over to you. The floor is yours.
Cool. Yeah. My disability to me, it actually means a lot to me. I feel as though it actually makes me stronger. Even though I do have muscular dystrophy and my life is ever changing, it actually does feel like I'm stronger because in the mindset I am. I've gone through a lot of challenges and things in my life that a lot of people maybe haven't gone through. And I think that's why it has made me really stronger and it's made me more determined to do the best I can do in life. Um, I love my disability most of the time. Sometimes I do hate it. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
It can be for some things, can be frustrating, but usually you try to do things differently than you used to do. You just try and do things differently. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad. I do love it, and I do feel like us as disabled people deserve the respect of everybody, because we've actually had a really tough and challenging life, but we're actually like some of the strongest people out there.
Okay, thanks a million. And Akura, I'll throw it over to you.
So my disability, something positive. Can I come back to the positive? I'll start with the
Yes, you
negative.
can. You can
So
take it whatever way you
negative
want.
would be negative would be like stuff like transport, like getting from A to B. People's stigma around disability. Like for example, when I go to a restaurant, people would talk to the people around me instead of me. Another
Okay.
thing would be like trying to find jobs which are accessible because I can't drive, and then like using public transport again would be an issue, and then like buildings, like always, like there could be steps and no ramp. And something positive, I would say it would be the same, the things Shannon and Connor said, because it makes us stronger. And I feel it connects us to people in like a very, it connects people, if you get what I mean. Like
Yeah, no, I understand.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Graham, what would your view be?
I think the negatives would probably be. I don't have many negatives now, but I think the negatives would probably be again public perception, and I think naively they probably see us as we approach them. It could be in town or whatever, and they probably default think in their head to our inabilities, when in fact we have a lot of abilities. Like the positives are, like, I mean, I love my wheelchair. I love it. Like Mark has always taught me since we've met that, my wheelchair is my enabler. And it enables me to do things. It enables me to go to work. It enables me. I've traveled the world. I've lived in Australia for the year. It enables me to play wheelchair basketball. There's hundreds and hundreds of positives of a brilliant life. The negatives again would be just sometimes public perception can be annoying, because they're probably thinking of inabilities, when in fact all of us here have a lot of ability. Aquara was saying there about people judging in a peculiar way because she achieved a master's. I mean, I've received that sometimes when people learn that I drive. They're like, "Oh my god, you drive!" It's like, "Of course I drive." So
It's a reflection
so
of how low people's expectations are of disabled people, if that's the
that
case.
that's what it is. And I suppose now, like, I'm 37, so as time goes on, I have to learn with those experiences whether to react in a way where, do I want to educate the person, or am I kind of going, are you for real? Like, do I take it up and do I react with hostility, or do I react in a way where, hold on, this is an opportunity to actually educate this person that people with disabilities have a lot of abilities.
And let me just probe on that. So, how do you react, Graham, and how do you make that judgment?
Well, as I've got older and as I've got wiser, well, I'm sure you'd probably say that I haven't got wiser, but
I'm
anyway,
trying to be
uh,
professional here, so I won't.
as I've got older and wiser, I do try to use go down the educational road of, trying to have a proper conversation on the topic, because when people approach it with in that example, they are being curious, and they are being, I don't think they mean to cause offense, but when I'm responding, I'm kind of going, just be careful on how you approach that going forward. I mean, it's, of course we can drive, of course we have the ability to drive. So it depends on, it's still like, in that subject, over the years, I've reacted in a polite way and a kind of educational way, so to speak. But I'm still trying to evolve when I see somebody parked in a disability spot, or if I'm just come out of if I've just come out of the supermarket and I can't get into my car, it's very hard to try and approach that experience where you want to educate somebody when you know that it's just pig ignorance.
Yeah, and in your experience, Graham, is it pig ignorance or is it a lack of awareness or is it a mixture?
I think my experience of being the like 90% pig ignorance, and I'd say that based on customers. Do you hear me? I based that on the person's body language when I've tried to approach them when they can't look me in the eye, or if it was a learned experience, they would be open to learn, and they would be open to know, oh God, I didn't know that area was for you to assemble your chair. I didn't know this. But all the time, in the majority of my experiences, the public have been pig ignorant, and it has been a case where they don't look you in the eye. They're embarrassed of what they've done. They're embarrassed that they're being approached in public. They know that they've done wrong, and all they want to do is get into the car and drive off.
Okay. Thanks, Graham. And Geraldine, I'll come to you lastly. And I suppose, as you said, your experience is that you acquired your disability midway through your life. So, if you don't mind, just if you wouldn't mind giving us your perspective and your experiences based on that question again about what your disability means to you and your perceptions around it.
Yeah, so for me, John, I would always have been a very determined and strong-minded individual. Well, I think I am anyway. So I don't think that changed, or it definitely hasn't impacted my life since I endured a disability. I have continued to be just really strong-minded and rebuild my life. I had to relearn, how to do basically everything. To get back to living independently, to being able to drive, to gaining employment, to living in a new town where I knew nobody, and you had to, manage footpaths and curbs and all that on your own. And it hasn't been easy, but my disability has definitely taught me to be extremely resilient and to I don't think of like negatives. I just try and figure out ways around it, to live my life as best I can. And I'm really positive. And, I suppose a few points Graham made about people's, I don't know, everyone's had different experiences. I kind of thought in the beginning maybe people were a little bit ignorant because I got a few bad comments, and I suppose that set me back a little bit, my mind frame. But I personally think now that people aren't aware, and it's only when you actually spend time with someone and they start to realize, oh, that isn't how you say, that isn't where I should be parked, or that isn't, I don't know, I shouldn't be touching your chair, or things like that. I think people don't really understand what they're doing is wrong, and I think that's why we have such an important role to create an awareness around this. Positives. I think personally, I found people to be extremely, kind, and really, lots of people come up to me and have offered help if they see me struggling. And in the beginning, I found that really annoying, probably, and I didn't give people a chance. But now I just see that people do it because they genuinely are trying to help you. And some people could find that really annoying, maybe because we are independent but it is always nice to be offered, I think. And I agree with what Shannon said around living our best life, and people living our best life, and why should people treat you any different? I think Shannon spoke really well and raised a lot of points. Connor as well, I agree with what he said around how he's adapted, and he will have to adapt with each stage of his disability. And I think that's what life is. We all have to adapt at different stages, and maybe your disability teaches you this firsthand and creates a stronger mindset, really.
Okay, thanks, Geraldine. And you know, my experience, for what it's worth, is that I'm somewhere between yourself and Shannon and Graham. So maybe in Dublin they're meaner. In Limerick they're not quite as mean, and up in Sligo and Wexford they're nicer. But I've had a mixture of experiences, ranging from pig ignorance to just people who are well intended and don't. And it can
Yeah.
happen close to home. My
Mhm.
father,
Yeah.
still to this day, when I'm getting my wheelchair out of my car, picks up the frame of my wheelchair to try and help me. And I have a system. And then
Yeah.
what ends up happening is that the two of us end up having a tug of war. And it's really difficult to have a tug of war with your 87-year-old father without getting really narky with him to tell him to stop. But he's well intended. He's well
Yeah. Yeah.
intended, and I'm with you,
Yeah.
Geraldine. I would rather someone ask for help and give me the opportunity to say no, I'm okay, thank you, but thank you for asking. And that for me is the way I would have a standard reply. That I would rather
Yeah.
somebody ask for help and let me to be the one to say no. Like, Mark, what would your view on that be?
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion, and just even listening to that last bit there, what comes to mind is some people who just think well of others and have good manners with everybody. So if you hold the door, if you ask someone there, do they need a hand with the chair getting into the car? They're probably the same type of people that hold the door going into a restaurant or the cinema or whatever it is. So I think, is to realize that as well when that's happening, that people are just being chivalrous and nice. And I think that's important as well, that it's not just happening because you might have a disability. But yeah, like for me, in terms of like, what does it mean to me? Well, it is part of my identity. When I was younger, I was born with spina bifida, so I've had a disability from birth. I was walking on crutches and calipers and all that up until the age of about 7. Then I was using my wheelchair, and a lot of it was unbeknownst to me. So I just carried on. Yeah, a lot of the guests tonight spoke of resilience, and I think maybe when I was younger, I was probably resilient. My parents were very encouraging. My older brother and younger brother really encouraging with me, and we just got on with it. And I think it's as I've got older, I've realised that there are still challenges out there, and you see like young parents or young families, and they might have a daughter or a son with a disability, and I kind of it tweaks with me. God, they could be going through what my parents were going through when they were younger, or you meet someone who's acquired their disability, and you just think how difficult that can be at the time. But I always believe that there's a journey, and it's a new journey, and for me, what it's allowed me to do is, like what people have said here today, is to be the best version of themselves. So sport played a huge part in my life, and inclusion, and my new role with the National Rehabilitation Hospital and my liaison role there, and working with children and adults with physical disabilities and limb absence and acquired brain injury. And you just see that there's so much potential moving forward with your life, which includes your disability as part of your identity. And I think that's really important to embrace both sides of it. That it is part of our identity at times. It's definitely part of mine, and that there are hurdles along the way, and we try and minimize those hurdles by educating people around us. And that's all we can keep doing. Even our podcast here today is just keep getting that message across. That's what that means to me.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And I suppose then I'll move on to a different angle. And again, I suppose there are lots. Let's face it, there are lots of issues and challenges that society puts on us, whether it be transport, whether it be access, housing. Like, it's a frightening statistic and fact that when the regulation in Ireland mandates that houses have to be visitable, but they don't require that when they build them that people in wheelchairs can live in them. So for all of us at some page, if you don't have a house now, you're looking into a house in the future. Then there may not be accommodation that meets your needs out there, and Irish Wheelchair Association is working tirelessly on that. But there are lots of other things, as I mentioned earlier, that there is a cost associated with living with a disability, an additional cost that maybe other people don't have. When we look at the work that's done by all disability organizations, including Irish Wheelchair Association, how important is it to you to hear the voice of us disabled people themselves? And Akira, I'm going to come to you first, because I know you're on the board of Irish Wheelchair Association as well. So, how important is hearing the voice of the disabled person in influencing, affecting
I
change?
think it is so important because it's nothing without us. Because like if it's like something to do with us, we have to be there because like for example my needs, like my dad or my mom couldn't tell someone what I would need. I could do that only myself.
Mm, yeah. Okay. And do you think that people make do you think people make assumptions in the absence or the void of hearing the voice of disabled people?
Yeah, I would say so. It would be the example, the thing that happened in Dublin when they got rid of disabled parking in some places for
Mm-hmm.
outdoor dining.
Yes.
I was shocked by it because I was like, there's definitely no one with a disability working in that kind of a place or who wasn't connected with that decision being made because like we got forgotten about.
Mm. For me, it felt like we took a step backwards where we had fought for inclusion, we had fought for the voice of disability to be heard when decisions are being made, and then all of a sudden, when an emergency hits, the first thing that gets pushed back and forgotten about is that inclusive voice, and it felt like we've taken a step backwards. Um, that's just my own perspective, so I would agree with you. Shannon, what do you think? Thanks, Akira.
Um, when Tammy hearing the voices of people with disabilities is very important in everything I believe in, knowing your rights. I believe in the whole lot, like nothing about us without us, as someone once said, like, and this really is a true and good statement, I think, and I feel strongly about um, speaking up for people with disabilities and speaking up for myself and
Okay. All
yeah.
right. Thanks, Shannon. So I'll go to you, Connor.
Yeah, to
Well,
me, yeah, to me, pretty much, I think it's so important for people to be shown with disabilities in the media, in just life, really. Even watching the Paralympics during the summer and seeing some fellow disabled people even presenting it was great to see. But we want to see it for all things, not just things that are relating to us. I think it's so important. I think they are getting better at it. I think as a whole, like people are getting better at it. But I think there's still a little bit, a long way, not a little bit, a long way to go before we get there. So yeah, to me, it's so important that disabled people are actually showing their own voice, and it's not somebody else, doing it for them.
okay. And just picking up on a point that you made there, and maybe I've picked it up incorrectly, but do you think that disabled people's voices tend to be just pigeonholed into matters relating to disabled people and not breaking into the mainstream of the general life that goes on?
Yeah, I feel as though that's really the case. I
Mm,
feel as though it's more just the issues that we're dealing with. We're pushed aside, and we're sort of saying, you need to talk about this because you're familiar with this. But as disabled people, we actually have a lot more to us than just our disabilities. So I think it's so important, and I think that's what we need to keep pushing forward, to be shown on a mainstream and not just in our area that people think we should be in, because we should be in every area.
yeah. Okay. Thanks, Connor.
Okay.
And Graham, I see you nodding there. Look, you're a man who's acquired himself and worked hard to get a good social media profile. So you've kind of been out there in the mainstream. What would your views on what myself and Connor were just talking about there?
I agree with the comment saying that are we pigeonholed into things, and I think we are, and unfortunately, like for example, we have had I think it's important. Like, let's say, for example, if I was invited on, I'm not saying I would be invited on, but let's say if I was invited on the Late Late Show on a Friday evening,
Here.
and it's everybody, like, the nation is watching. Like, I will sit in my wheelchair if I was given that opportunity. I think it's very important for people with disabilities. If we're looking for advocacy, if we're looking for uh, respect, if we're looking for accessibility, I mean, if I'm flicking the station, Johnny, for example, let's say you have been on the Late Late Show and you've remained in your wheelchair. If I'm clicking the station and let's say Mark is a guest, but Mark is not, Mark is sitting in his chair. I mean, if I see Mark sitting in his wheelchair, if I'm channel hopping, I want to stay on that channel. I want to see, oh God, what's his story? But I just think it's important that we use, we use those opportunities, if we are afforded those opportunities, to be proud of our wheelchairs and to be proud of our disability. I do think that we are pigeonholed. Like, I would be asked numerous times a year to take part in TV ads or whatever, and it always seems to be like it's the token wheelchair guy. It's the
Okay.
token,
Yeah.
tick the box diversity thing, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, I do say yes, and the ad could be on the TV, and it is showing awareness. Someone's at home saying, "Oh, look, there's someone in a wheelchair," and that's great. But I think we just need to embrace that a bit more.
Okay, thanks, Graham. Interesting. And look, as we discuss, I know we've got a finite amount of time, but it starts triggering so many questions that I'd
Hmm.
love to sit down in a room with you and chat through just around all of that. Geraldine, from your perspective, like you're quite prolific in your writing, and people will have seen your blog on our website today, and it's a powerful blog. If you don't mind me saying that to you, and I love reading your writing because it's very
Oh,
direct
thanks, John.
and it's very powerful. So from your perspective, how important is that voice? And have you do you feel in your area of expertise that there's a bit of pigeonholing going on?
Yeah, I suppose there is a bit of as Graham said, a token wheelchair person, and to highlight diversity. Um,
Or if you're
around my
James Bond, it
writing,
would be a villain.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Around my writing with the Western people, I find it just brilliant in the fact that they just give me free reign. It doesn't have to be about my disability, or doesn't have to be about anything in particular. I can bring my disability into it if I want to, and I've used it to give a platform. I have a friend who is in a wheelchair and has started his own clothing range, and he was actually on the Late Late Show that we're talking about that only, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he's just a fantastic young lad who, was tried to rebuild his life as well after a spinal cord injury, and is living independently. He's starting his own business, and he stayed in his chair while he was on the show, which is a really good point, I suppose, to make, that we should use opportunities to showcase our chairs. Like, what, there's nothing to be ashamed about, and I suppose that's the bottom line. It's about taking pride in ourselves, in all our abilities, and in our whole self, not just in our whole self. And I suppose we all have limitations. Everyone does, but it's about accepting that and loving who we are, and building a positive narrative around people with disabilities, in the
Hmm.
wider community, and just, every day meeting people, and just generally showcasing our stories, and just being proud of who we are.
Okay, thanks, Geraldine. Interesting point. And like for me, like I'm going to throw a random question at you here now, one that I haven't spoken to you about at all. Like 12 months from now, what is the one big thing you'd like to see happen, or one big thing you'd like to see a change in? And I'll start it off, and it's picking up on a point that you made, Geraldine. Like I would love for there to be a much bigger momentum about, I would call it disability pride. and it's going back to like when we saw the marriage referendum, and what was so successful about that was it brought everybody in. It brought everybody, embraced every community, and made it relevant to every community. So I would love to see that in the world of disabled people, that there would be a disability pride to celebrate disability and to celebrate the ability alongside it, and to move away from this perception that disability means inability. So that would be my. I would love to see a huge change in momentum in that. Okay, I'm going to throw it out to you first. I'm not even going to pick names. Is there one big thing you'd love to see change?
For me, it's housing
Okay, yeah. Can you talk
and
to that a
around
bit more, Geraldine?
accessibility. Yeah, so I've been living in a residential setting since I left the NRH back in 2014. So that is 7 years, 7 years of my life that I have lived in a communal setting, which it can be quite difficult at times. So there's people with physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, addiction problems, and we're all kind of just shoved into the one building, as it were. And that it's nearly like you're kind of just like that's the house of all the people with
Mm,
what would you say, so it's challenging, and it can be a bit disappointing at times that our government doesn't do more to help around accessibility and housing, and when they're building more houses, thinking around how I can make this compatible with everyone's life. So that for me is what I would love to see changing.
okay, thanks, Geraldine. And I have to say, I probably would be a little bit more direct in you say that's absolutely wrong.
Mm.
It is so wrong,
That you're
definitely.
faced with that situation. So you're at the moment living in a residential setting until such time as you can find accessible accommodation.
Yeah, that's it
Yeah.
exactly. And for
Okay.
the
Well,
last,
thank you for your honesty, but yeah, that I would love to see that change too. Connor, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think for me, it's to have more awareness. I hope there's more awareness raised from today, for next year. But I feel as a country, especially here in Ireland, we just do need to do better. I hope things like housing do change. That's one thing that I'd be really looking forward to changing, and just more laws and legislations in put in to help people with disabilities and just make sure they're okay and they're fine, because I feel like we're mostly just ignored. We're sort of thrown to the side when it comes to planning out things in this country. Um,
Okay.
so I think we just need to get better at that.
Okay. Thanks, Connor. Shannon, is there one thing you'd love to see changed apart from the rain down in Wexford?
For me, more, yeah, um, more inclusion, um, would be the thing I would love to see more inclusion. So that would be the main thing for me. Um, people with disabilities getting more jobs and doing all that, feeling included in the mainstream um, society, basically.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Shannon. And Graham, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think Geraldine said about housing, and I couldn't agree more. I think that situation that she is in is absolutely disgraceful. I think I've obviously an interest in media, so I would like to see more inclusion in media, in our national broadcaster, and independent broadcasters. Not just this. Okay, it's Paralympic year. We had the guys on for the 2 weeks, right? We'll see us in 4 years' time or 3 years' time, wherever it may be. Try and take a leaf out of Channel 4's book in England, and they do it all. They seem to do it all year round now. They have people with
Mm,
disabilities hosting magazine shows, travel shows, educational shows on social social setting. So I'd like to
Yeah.
see more disability inclusion in our media, whether it be guests, hosts, even on radio, and have them be celebrated as well.
Okay. Thanks, Graham. Ikura, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, I would say, like, you know, the way COVID happened, everyone kind of like were isolated at home, and the truth is, like, most people with disabilities are at home because of like lack of access. And I just hope now, I know COVID is still around, but after COVID, people become more aware and considerate towards people with disabilities.
Okay. Thank you, Ikura. And Mark, finally, we've got just under 5 minutes left on the clock. So would you like to give us your perspective? How would you like to
Yeah,
see change?
yeah, a lot of change. But just a couple of things. Like, I'm a big believer in, like, that was a really good campaign in relation to the "Can't See It, Can't Be It" campaign for the 2020 Vision campaign
Mm.
for women and women in sport, particularly. And I think that translates in general terms, not just in sporting terms, but for people with disabilities. I think that's really important. Graham touched on a great point there about Channel 4 and their positive imagery of people with disabilities across the whole spectrum of media. And media is really important because it's so emotive. You see it, you hear it. And then finally, naturally, what Geraldine said, that definitely brings out strong emotions in me. It couldn't not bring out feelings for all of us and the people listening today, in that just shouldn't happen. It's not right. It shouldn't happen, and we have to change that, and we have to affect change with the people that listen to us. For people to realize that, you really do. You do encounter people with disabilities. You will experience disability no matter what happens as you live your life with loved ones, or as people get older now, because we're all living older. We'll acquire disabilities, or you just
Mm.
you get older and more infirm. But in relation to what Geraldine said there, yeah, that's just simply not right. And I think that's a really strong, honest, transparent message from Geraldine, and fair dues to her for being honest, for sharing that today, because we know of many others who have the same issues. And it's great to have someone like Geraldine who's a voice for those people today, to say, stand up there and be counted. And let's get that out there, because housing is a big, big issue. We've got people with disabilities, our members with limited mobility, who don't have correct housing purely because they have a disability. That's not right.
Thanks, Mark.
No worries, Geraldine.
Can't hear Johnny. Johnny's gone.
There you go. I had inadvertently pressed my mute button. And lots of people would like to do that to me, I can tell you. So look, we're just coming to the end of our time. So what I would like to say is that it's very important to Irish Wheelchair Association that in the work that we do, that your voice is heard. And tonight's been just another opportunity where we can facilitate your voices being heard. And I really look forward to hearing more from you, and a lot more of the people that you know. Because to me, that's the real reality of how we'll affect change, with the support of this organization and many like us. That we will affect the change. So I want to say thank you very much to Connor, to Shannon, to Graham, to Geraldine, to Ikura, and to Mark for coming on today and having a good chat. As I say, there were so many directions this conversation could go, and I'd love to be able to sit down in person someday when we're allowed and have that chat with you. So, and thank you. I will say thank you to everybody who supported this, and Kieran, who's been quietly in the background there, managing it all, and keeping me on time. So, thank you very much, folks. Enjoy your International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and maybe this time next year we might come back to it, have another session, and see how our great ambitions were realized throughout the year.
Thanks,
Sound like a
everybody.
plan?
Thanks,
Cheers.
Johnny.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you, guys.
Thank